I'm Penny Power, and I have the incredible pleasure of interviewing Dermot Hill, who's the CEO and founder of Stakeholderz. So this is an interview series which I think is going to be very fascinating to investors, new investors, and the founders out there who are thinking maybe now is the time to start getting investment in my business. My background is in technology, but it goes a bit broader than that. And so I'm very, very excited by interviewing Dermot for you to be able to learn about his niche and also understand the market that exists around investment, and also learn a lot about values that are held around stakeholders. So lovely to see you, Dermot.
Annie, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, just to get some context here.
So, by background, I'm an executive search specialist. So over the years, I have seen so many CEOs that we've appointed go and build fantastic businesses and exit extremely well. And that was over 18 years. So I decided that there's something else in the community that we were working with within Intricacies, the search firm. And out of that, we've then spun Stakeholderz, and we've also got that community within Stakeholderz, because this senior executive community is absolutely central to the essence of what we're about, I think, to go on to discuss.
So for anybody, this is going to be an interview series, and I want people to work through and listen to them all, because I think it'll be very valuable. Just at a very top level. Stakeholderz, it's a crowdfunding platform, yes?
It is. It's regulated, which I think is very important. So it has all of that rigour attached to it. And it also has got an amazing community behind it, which I've referred to just now, of senior executives. It's in fact 8,500 today and growing.
Wow.
And that means that we get a lot of exciting ventures referred to us, and these are off-market. So angels registered elsewhere won't see them.
Right.
And that also means that we can engage senior executives in these ventures to help them power through to exit. And we believe that will see earlier exits and a greater scale.
Yeah, and that's where you're bringing in your incredible network and your knowledge of finding the right talent for people.
Yes, absolutely. And I have had a very privileged life, I have to say. I've met so many amazing, exciting people. And some, of course, can be a little bit acerbic, and that's their style. They get the job done.
Yeah.
And sometimes companies specifically go out to find those sorts of people, because that is the sort of grit that is needed at that point in time in the company's evolution to drive the business forward.
Yeah.
So, in fact, indeed, my background is both in senior interim appointments, which are short, high-impact projects, as well as key executives for long-term business growth and development.
Yeah, so it seems such a natural, organic shift for you to move into doing this. But you must have spotted a gap in the market that you thought, I need to fill here.
And absolutely right. The gap in the market is there quite clearly to be seen. There are the super companies, and by that I mean Seeders and Crowdcube. They are very big at what they do. Formed in 2009. They have gone on to put over $1 billion of equity investment into the market between the two of them. And that's well over $1 billion. And they have done an amazing job, but they are very much at the retail end of the market. So retail investors will put in anything between, up of £5. And in fact, last night I was watching the ticker tape on one of the sites, and I was seeing investments of 121, 150, 200 going across. Very small amounts, and that means that there's a very crowded cap table, and therefore they have to set up nominee arrangements, and the chief executive that runs the company that's drawn in the money still has the same reporting obligation. They do it through the nominee, and technically it's easier. But any one of those investors needs to be kept informed. In fact, every investor needs to be kept informed to ensure that their investor base is very well managed and looked after. So it brings quite a... One company has, and I saw again on the website, 4,000 investors that put in 3 million. So that's quite a large it's quite a large cap
It
table.
is.
So it brings its own challenges in building very successful and effective businesses. Now, our market, on the other hand, is working with the sophisticated high net worth business angels and our executive teams within the network that we have, many of whom are coming to investing for the first time. So we're bringing new investors into the market. But what they come with is this remarkable insight into the business world and how to get things done. And what I've found, and this is the 2 years since we actually have established Stakeholderz, that these investor communities are enormously supportive of the CEOs that they have backed. And so we're seeing so many good things coming through. So the dream of bigger exits sooner is so well on its way. And I'm sure we'll get to talk about our first two investments in a minute, but it's just been an amazing journey to this point.
Yeah, so I've got to know you and I've got to understand Stakeholderz. And my own personal journey, as you know, was we had a large number of investors in our first business, Thomas and I had. And it's quite interesting. I love the point you make about that broad reach of investors compared to a few select ones that understand your market and have interest. I know that as somebody who had investors, stress that can create if you have such a large group. So I think it's a very, very powerful model that you're producing there. So tell us about a couple of your experiences so far, because they've been fantastic.
We're being very selective. So far we've done two and completed two funding rounds for separate companies. One in the industrial Internet of Things space. And one of the great challenges is valuing the business in a fair way for the market to be interested, for the executive team to be rewarded and encouraged. And they came to us and said, well, our valuation is being talked around 500,000 because we're a startup. And the startup in that way was described as pre-revenue. They hadn't billed anybody. And when we then said, well, look, tell us the story. What is behind all of this? Why are you so excited and why are you so disappointed about the 500,000 valuation? And they said, well, we've been commissioned to do two proof of concept projects, one with a very large steel manufacturer and one with a very large network rail operator. And both, of course, in the Internet of Things space, very clever deployment of technology. Each for 95,000, signed on the company's letterhead. So we then said, you're definitely not a startup, you've got commercial traction, which is what we look for. And therefore we will give you a valuation of 1.2 million. And that was just the accelerator that they felt was good. The amazing thing was that they came to us, they wanted 500,000, and we said 3 months, and they walked away in 8 weeks with 750,000.
That's fantastic.
So I have to say not all of it, and in fact only a small part of it came from Stakeholderz, but we got them to harness what they were telling the market in such a way. And they were a very strong, very sophisticated, very, very savvy executive team. So they could tell the story, but with a little bit of repackaging and presentation and the right valuation, away they went.
Yeah, well, that's the power of your own knowledge of business and your network, isn't it? And the fact that you can have that intimacy of bespoking almost, you know, what they need to make sure that the founders achieve what they want and the investors get what they want.
Indeed.
So
there is a sequel to that.
Yeah.
12 months later, they're raising money at 4 times their valuation that we gave them. So that means a paper uplift, and a paper uplift only, but nonetheless an impressive one, of 4 times the investors' money that they put in. So it is truly an amazing example, I think, of how exciting it can be, and if it's got right, how successful it can be.
Yeah.
And we have a second company which specialises in ad tech. And what we've discovered is that digital marketing is actually a big minefield. There's an awful lot of digital banners being triggered by bots, and their product can actually detect how many banners have been triggered by bots. We've just done a small campaign, and we found that 87.3% of the banner activity that was triggered for our advertising campaign was actually triggered by bots. Staggering. And so that was an instant rerun by the real estate owner. They couldn't believe how poor the figures were. And this is British ad tech at its very best.
amazing.
Companies beat us off. They've just completed 375,000.
Fantastic. Yeah, I saw that presentation and it was absolutely brilliant.
Yes, it was.
So it's your time spent finding the right type of businesses to invest in is also a very big part of it, because you want them to be good, and you can obviously help them find the right talent to help it scale.
Correct.
But it's a wonderful scenario.
That's such a good point, because what we are actually seeing is that the companies come to us, they know they're going to scale like mad, and they all know that they're going to be underpowered. At some point they're going to hit a glass ceiling, and they need senior executive talent to help drive through that. And that's where, if they can see it before it happens and manage their way through it quickly, that keeps their growth really fast and furious. It's exciting.
It is exciting. And so obviously two sides of the coin here. You've got your founders and how you look after them, and I think we'll come to that a little bit more in detail as well, because that's a very essential part of the return the investor's going to get, is how well you look after the founders, and important to them as well. But I know that you have put a lot of time into making sure you provide the right information to investors. Tell us more about what you've done.
So this is part of our regulated activity. We have got to secure a really strong data room of information for investors to come and have a look at. This is the company's data. We have a statement which we use triple lock. So it has to be signed off by the CEO as true, fair and not misleading. I then have to sign it off as true, fair and not misleading, and the regulated signatory has to sign it off as true, fair and not misleading, at which point we can then press the publish button. So there's a big process that builds to making sure that this is a very solid set of data for angel investors and clearly business investors to come in and have a look at. So it's a very good process. It does take some time to craft it. One of our companies has actually taken 10 months to get it completed. That's too long, and there were very, very good reasons for why that was the case. But others have done it in 14 days. Very quick, very slick, thorough documents, and great process.
So it must be incredibly good for the due diligence of the business and the real diagnosis of what this business is going to be able to do.
Yes.
When the investor reads that.
Absolutely. So the accounts have to be signed off by their accountant. Again, it's true, fair and not misleading. So it's such a good process to go through. Now, this is a very important part of what we do, but other parts of our work is all about engagement with the investor community. We've got to bring the companies alive, because it's not just going to the data room and making a decision. We have had one or two investors do that, because they will. But actually, we see our job as getting that company to come to life in front of an audience, in front of people who are asking, in times, very searching, quite deep questions. And we'll do that at dinners, we'll do that in open networking events. And that engagement is extremely important to us. So we've taken that a stage further. So we've now gone online, we have a webinar channel, so that the ventures come to us and we can do both an online pitching session, and we also have a session which is focused on putting the feet to the fire. So I ask the deep questions, I put them through their paces. They do know in part the questions I'm going to ask, but it's a very good way of people getting closer, more closer engaged. And the good thing about the webinar technology is that the investors can draw it down at any time in the 24-hour clock. So it's very accessible.
So that level of information, due diligence, and your time on it, the conversion rates must be quite good, which is great for everyone. It's the speed at which you must be able to raise the finance.
It is. Now, the crowd, we've used the term, the crowd is very powerful, because actually what investors do is some will follow the crowd. We have a lead investor model, which of course, if we and when we find someone of note that we can put up as that lead investor, that they are going to have done a lot of their own personal due diligence, they're going to know the market sector very well. But if we can't find one of those, then other investors are going to have to take the lead in their own way. And what people will do then is stand downstream of that process and watch the build of the investment round, and they will come in towards the back end, because there's a groundswell of support for this business, which is really interesting and absolutely right for them at the time they've followed their investment, which is lovely. So it's very transparent. And it's a very good way for people to ease their way into actually investing.
So if we talk now a bit more about Stakeholderz as a business, I mean, you've put an unbelievable amount of passion into this and purpose, and obviously recognise the gap in the market. Let's just talk a little bit about what the niche is that you're serving. You know, who are the people that you think you can serve the best, but also both the founder and the investors. Because I know that this is far beyond just the transaction for you. I know this is a big, important project.
It is, and so start with the founder. The founder has this brilliant idea, and they want to make a business out of it. Well, we'll have a look at who they are. You know, clearly, if they haven't quite got the management depth and breadth, we can find the management to cluster around them, and that's where we bring in our investing director model. So these people will often come into the company at either low salary, no salary. Indeed, some of them may well also invest some of their own capital to take that role. They are passionate about it, but they come with an enormously impressive pedigree. And that actually helps the whole funding story. I've used the term before, but the story is very important.
Yeah.
So the founder is key in everything that we do. Now, the founder is so key that along the journey, they can actually drop out of the company. That's often a great shame because a lot of that goes with the IP. And so how can we preserve the founder? And you can preserve the founder in the business that they still enjoy being part of because they've got such a great executive team around them that the business is successful. And as a result, they just love being on the journey. They have to be a bit more adaptable in how they approach their career and what their job title is.
Yeah.
But if they're willing to move with the executive team that they've got around them, they can do and go on to do great things.
I think that's so powerful. I mean, I know from my own journey, I chose not to be the CEO of the Academy, and when I look at a business that I'm considering building again, I'll be looking for that sort of talent. I think that's a really, really honest approach to the reality of not all founders can lead a business into the future. So I've noticed that you have this SEIS round yourself, which must give you massive empathy as well with the founders. So tell me more about that.
So the SEIS is a big piece of government innovation, and we don't often associate governments with innovation. Actually, it's HMRC innovation. And what that has done is brought so many more investors to the table, willing to put their money in, because actually the government has said they will support them if they lose their money. They put the money in on day one, and the journey happens, and providing they're careful in who they invest in, it will come to a very good conclusion, but it's not guaranteed. It's risky. So the government has taken this view on SEIS and EIS, which really does support the angel investor. And as a result, it's had a major impact on the amount of equity funding available for early stage companies. And they have been hugely successful and innovative in how they've approached this. So, you know, great credit to HMRC. And
great credit to you, because you're going through this process yourself.
Yes.
And that must give you massive empathy.
Yes. So actually going for SEIS funding ourselves was one of the big milestones I set, because I needed to understand what it was like to build a pitch deck, to go and pitch to investors. Because if I was doing all of this, often in parallel with the companies that are coming to us, then I have greater empathy for the process that they're currently going through. I know how the investors are going to react. I have seen this firsthand about the messaging in pitch decks. If it's wrong, it just turns investors off. I'm happy to say that our pitch deck seems to work well, and we're virtually complete on our SEIS round. But I'm also amazed at the diversity of the investors that we've got engaged. We haven't got a large number involved, but what's been intriguing is that supportive group is enormously invigorating to the work that I do. And you know, I feel, and I count myself today as very blessed to have been part of that process and to have made the decision to actually go out and do an SEIS fundraise.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, here we are, we're talking about founders of businesses, investors investing in it, the platform in order to do it. You must have a really good sense of what this sort of new wave of entrepreneur is that we're seeing now. Would you like to share a little bit more about what you think?
Yes, I think they differ. Definitely, there is that difference. And you almost differ by the decade, really. You can deal with the more senior, more traditional type of CEO, very good at what they do, but they're different. Their difference is the way they think. So the younger CEOs coming up are very much more agile in their thinking. They're probably not into the detail as much as the more senior ones. But actually, the energy that the younger CEOs bring to the market is truly phenomenal. The passion, the vision, and they're the ones that are going to be, and are indeed today, building the big businesses of tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's good, but I do see that they do need to be surrounded by their centurions that support them, that will get the detail done and addressed, and therefore they have a very effective business machine behind them, because otherwise the business is built on sand. With great leaders who are very charismatic, who are very passionate, who are very articulate. So what is the substance below that? Because if they don't tackle the detail in the right way, the business is not then destined for the greatness that it should be.
Yeah, so there's some phenomenal sort of young entrepreneurs, aren't there, that have got great insights into a very different world that we're stepping into now, especially in the technology world. But I really get a sense of the fact that, and we've seen this with many sort of high-profile stories where the CEOs are just not, the founders are just not right to continue with the business. But there is also, I hear, a tranche of more mature investors, more mature founders, I should say.
Indeed, there is.
Which I think is incredibly exciting.
So certainly the little cadre of companies coming through Stakeholderz tends to have the more senior level and aged CEOs. They're very experienced. They know what they're doing. They've been around the block lots of times. And it's very interesting to talk to them. But just dropping back to the point you raised earlier about the difference in the younger, they've been brought up with computers. They know instinctively now the software and how it works. Actually, everybody's had to learn that from all the generations that are working today. But the younger, more dynamic, if you like, and more energized CEOs coming out, the entrepreneurs, the founders coming out, have really got this message, which is tech, and they understand it. And then obviously their minds then proliferate out. What we're seeing too is that the technology CEOs and founders have got to actually be very brave. They're entering and building new markets as well as new businesses and new lines of business. And so you're seeing someone there that's much more intrepid, much more adventurous. It's not like a lot of the companies that have actually been funded on crowdfunding, which are going into a new, coffee distribution business or jewellery business, established markets which are less risky. But these tech entrepreneurs are truly phenomenal in how they actually come to terms with it's not going to be quite like this tomorrow because we're going to change the world.
Yeah. And I think finding those and bringing them in and getting the investment is fantastic. What I think is so powerful about what you're doing is they need talent around them.
Yeah, they do.
Because they don't necessarily have the business acumen and knowledge to help them build a strong, scalable business today.
Indeed. And I think that what we're seeing is this sixth sense. And who gets that sixth sense about what's going to happen next in the business? And someone, the chief operating officer, is probably thinking about that sixth sense, which is looking daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly ahead, where the CEO's got to be way out in front and looking at the vision and the strategy and putting it in such lucid words that everybody's on the journey. But the COO has actually got to tuck in and get this delivered.
Yeah.
And they've got to do a really first-class job.
Yeah, phenomenal. So Dermot, where is this crowdfunding world heading?
Yeah. So today we see actually an evolving and quite crowded market for crowdfunding solutions. Stakeholderz is very well differentiated because, of course, we have the human capital element to our business, where we're finding world-class senior executives to dock with our capital side of our business and equity funding. And so that means that we are very well positioned to continue to build our business undeterred by competitive activity. But what I do think is going to happen, at some point there's going to be a process of integration. So some of the great companies, some of whom haven't actually made any money yet and have had tens of millions invested in them, are going to be thinking, well, we need to change the business model, this isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do? They're going to have to look at what they do today, how do they get from here in the next 5 years to somewhere which is a great exit. And therefore integration, I think, will happen. And it might be that we become acquisitive, or it might be that they become acquisitive. But there will be consolidation in the market. I think that will be very exciting. I think it'll be very good for the market.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to make sure that crowdfunding, that has been so phenomenally successful since 2009, when the great companies of today were formed, when those companies were formed, that period from then to now has just seen crowdfunding so established in today's UK PLC market as a great source of fueling the businesses of tomorrow.
Yeah, and that makes it a phenomenally exciting market, doesn't it? I mean, there's a real sense, I feel, of hope and excitement around the investment market now.
Yes.
It seems to be. Why do you feel it's an exciting time for investors?
So, I have to say that we've just seen a political change, and wherever people's own aspirations wanted to get us to, the last 3 years, the economy, the future of us all, has been under question. None of us knew. It is now clear. And if you go to any businessman, what they wanted was clarity. I think the recent developments have illustrated that.
Yeah.
So today, I sit in front of you, Penny, to say that our register has grown 10% since the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
And we're only halfway through January.
Yeah, that is tremendous.
It is tremendous. In the headlines in the newspapers last night, the London property market is back, in big letters on the front page. So things are changing, and they will continue to change very rapidly. So I am personally extremely optimistic of what's going to happen in 2020.
That's exciting.
That's going to play back into the crowdfunding market.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crowdfunding. I think the flavour I get here is crowdfunding is becoming more an established way of raising money. But what I really like about Stakeholderz is there are some businesses that need more than just some money thrown at them. You know, to have real success, they need this. So just as a summary for me, explain to me how Stakeholderz is differentiating from the point of view. I mean, I know Crowdcube and I know Seeders, and I've experienced them both as a small investor and going out and doing crowdfund myself. And the breadth, we've talked earlier about the breadth of investors you get, but also I'm still all on my own as the CEO of the business. Once it closes, you're on your own. Explain a little bit more about yourselves.
So I think when CEOs come to us for a fundraise, they get an empathy that they probably don't get elsewhere. And the reason I'm pretty confident in that is that it's this deep understanding of the challenges that they face to get the funding in the first place and where they are as a business. And we're always into the question of what is this story? What is it that they're going to tell the investors? How compelling will it be? And if we are helping them on that journey, which we do in quite a lot, in quite a big way, indeed we've got one of our earlier fundings of the two we discussed earlier in the interview. One of them is actually coming back for another funding round with us because of this depth of insight that we apply along the journey. And so that, I think, is almost immeasurable. It is almost priceless.
Yeah.
Clearly that's where we make some of our money. And it is absolutely fundamental in the success of a fundraise.
Yeah. You're almost partnering with them on a
Definitely.
journey, aren't you? Which
Definitely.
is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
So you've got the machine behind it, which is fantastic, and your platform, but then you've got this human element that is so powerful.
Yes.
So for those looking to invest for the first time,
Yeah.
which, you know, you said earlier, it's such an exciting time.
It is.
This is the time to consider it, but they may be unsure of the risk of the reward. What advice would you offer a potential investor?
Well, I think we're going to do a number of things at Stakeholderz, because actually supporting investors on their journeys is as important as supporting the entrepreneur on theirs.
Yeah.
So we're just about to launch our learning centre, and we have a joint venture with Morwenna Rees-Mogg of Angel News, who is very well respected in the sector. And we're going to be running a series of masterclasses to brief angels and bring new angel investors to the market.
Wow.
So that, I think, will be very telling. I think it will be a very big success. We've done quite a lot of research to make sure that we get it balanced with the needs we believe the market currently has. I think that programme will grow in both depth and breadth. Clearly it's London-centric. We'll move it out into the provinces because this is something that the whole of the country enjoys. I mean, there are amazing investors all the way around the UK.
So if somebody's interested in that,
yes.
What's the minimum sort of investment would qualify them to be able to go on something like that?
So they don't have to put any investment in at all. They just have to be interested to attend the masterclass.
Right.
Enough to pay the fee to attend the
Right,
masterclass.
okay.
So I mean, no sort of secret here.
Right.
£350 gets
Right.
them
Into the
training.
masterclass.
Yeah, and then there's 2 other modules that follow that.
Right.
And if they want to buy all 3 at the same time, of course we look after them.
Yeah, that's great.
But they don't have to have invested. What most investors should do is to look at their ability to be fit for purpose in the role of angel investor. That means protecting their own fund and investment, and they can only do that by improving their knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes, experience counts for a lot. Yes, business experience counts for a lot, but there is now some really respected, world-class, accumulated knowledge around the angel skill set that they should have great awareness of, because we need to have really well-educated investors in our community so that they're making the great decisions and they are really confident in the ventures that we're bringing to market, and they're backing them, and they're backing them in the right way.
Yeah, that's very exciting to be out educating the market. That's brilliant. Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Dermot, you've been a businessman for how many years?
Well, certainly 25 years.
Yeah.
More than I can remember, I think.
Yeah. And what really inspires you around being a businessman?
So I think it's the thrill of the chase. I think it's very much getting out of bed in the morning thinking, well, today is another really exciting day. Where am I going to take myself, my future, my career, and those around me? And I think that certainly my current task in Stakeholderz as CEO is to make sure that those people in Stakeholderz today are hugely successful in what they do. I think I spend quite a lot of time, in fact, working with them to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. I've deliberately employed people that are great thinkers because I want to understand how they think, and I've also gone for a lot of diversity in that. So there's different ways that they think as well. And so we put together various sprints and we deliver those quickly because that's what we're in the business of doing, moving stakeholders together fast as a team. And so my great success, I think, and it's not there today but it's coming, is to look back on our achievements and look at the people that are around me and how we've all enjoyed the journey together. Yeah. So there's a very strong people and team element to what I do.
Yeah. Well, that's just sort of joining the dots looking back, because it's hard to join the dots forward, isn't it?
It is.
But you're also, I mean, whenever I'm with you, your energy around business is so exciting. You're also a tremendous networker, aren't you?
Yes.
You've tell us about what you did in Cambridge, for example.
Thank you. So, yes, you're quite right. I mean, I think this is about personal contact. I think people are business, people drive business, people make the results come to business. And so being a networker and moving amongst people that are actively involved in business has given me the most amazing reach into places like Cambridge. So I set up the Cambridge 100 there. I did it as an experiment. I ran it with focus groups to start with. All of them said, no, it's not going to work in Cambridge. And yet 12 years on, 1,700 new members since then, and we're motoring. It's a great success. And it's one of the unsung mid-tier networks in Cambridge, which is extremely well connected.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I think people underestimate the importance of building social capital in business.
Social capital, love the term.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about human capital and obviously equity capital.
Yes.
But social capital, that's what really, when I spend time with you, that's what leaks out to me, is this incredible formation. Because your network, when I've gone to your events and when I see the investors having, the founders having a chance to pitch, you've got an incredible group of people in the room.
Yes.
And I think that comes from people trusting you and knowing you and knowing you're consistent, knowing you're there over a long period of time. And that to me is social capital, which is a phenomenal asset to have in a business, I think.
Yes, we're very lucky, and I'm very lucky to have that, and you're quite right, I am capitalising on it.
Yeah, well, it's right to. I think it's one of your core skills.
I have one great tenet in life, which is give before you expect to receive, and that's the basis on which we set up the Cambridge 100. And that is one of the reasons why I believe it's still going strong today. It's this giving, and fundamental giving before you expect anything back, that is so important.
Yeah, so I'm really fascinated in that subject. So I was told when I was about 21, and I had my first promotion to being a supervisor in a company, doing sales in a tech company. I was a classic servant leader. And I thought, that's really interesting. And then when I started the academy, somebody said it to me again. And I think that you sound very much like a servant leader, where you lead in order to serve others.
Yes.
It's not driven by your ego to need a position or status.
Absolutely. And it is fundamental, because if you don't put yourself in the other person's position and understand what is motivating and driving what they want out of life, you probably haven't gone to work that day. You've got to understand this. This is first, front and foremost in what a really great leader, I think, of today has to do. And that's back to the dynamic CEOs of today. They're really good at that. They build great teams around them.
Yeah, and it seems quite passive in a way to some people, servant leadership, but I think it's the way the great leaders are doing it now, because they're leading an organisation to serve their clients, their stakeholders, their staff. It's about the success of others, isn't it? So that really comes through for you. So this is a great fireside chat experience. I've really enjoyed it. Are you going to roll this out to other people?
Well, we've already been trialling this because we've been doing this in our webinar series, because obviously we've got the ability to bring people online around the country, and they come in some numbers now. So we're using this to actually engage with people with more of an intellectual message, so authors of books. I dare say that we would like to, if you're willing to do so, do one about your wonderful book, Business is Personal. But we did one yesterday about coaching, and it was coaching on the go. And the response we've had to that has been phenomenal. And the reason we do it, by the way, is that this is playing really interesting knowledge and understanding back into our angel investing and our entrepreneurial communities.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, you're sharing your connections as well as the knowledge they have, which again is the default way that you live and your values. So thank you very much. Great to talk.
Penny, thank you. Fantastic.